Welcome to the Elevate Podcast, a resource to help your ministry take the next step. Whether you're leading a team, building a strategy, or just trying to steward what's in front of you, we're here to offer practical tools, honest conversations, and insight from leaders who are in it with you. I'm Brian Coates, Senior Executive Pastor at Brentwood Baptist, and today we're going to be talking about something that's foundational but often overlooked: how we align our ministry decisions, our calendars, goals, and budgets with the mission and vision that God has given us. Joining me today are Bill Ferrell, our Executive Pastor of Central Support, and John Joseph, our Campus and Teaching Pastor at Station Hill. Together, we're exploring what it looks like to stay mission-centered and vision-aligned in both philosophy and practice. So let's get started. All right, guys, as we get started today, we're going to talk about mission and vision really throughout the entire conversation. But let's start off right here. Why is it so important for us to lead clearly from a defined mission and vision? So, and what happens when we don't start from that center? John, I'll start with you. Why do you think that that's important and key for us as we're leading out?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think just one kind of basic observation, biblically speaking, is it's really interesting to me that when God creates human beings, the very first thing he does is give them a mission, right? Yeah. Exercise dominion, fill the earth. Yeah. Then when Jesus, rises from the dead, gives his people the Great Commission. Yeah. It's interesting. At two very key points in Scripture, God is giving clearly defined mission to his people. So I think it's just an observation that we as people are missional creatures. Yeah. God made us for a purpose to live with a particular mission. And so just defining mission for people is helpful in and of itself because we as humans want to know what we're here for, and specifically speaking about the church, what does a church exist for? But it's also important when you think about that well-known quote that has to do more with preaching and teaching, but it applies to this conversation, that if there's a mist in the pulpit, there's going to be a fog in the pew. That is to say, if there's lack of clarity from the front, there's going to be even more confusion in the congregation. And so it's just so important for us as church leaders to be very clear about what our mission is as a church. We're engaging the whole person with the whole gospel, anywhere, anytime, with anybody, whole gospel of Jesus Christ. Right? That's our clear vision. We have a clear vision statement as well to go along with our mission statement. And then we want to be repeating that, talking about it regularly so that there's clarity from the front so that our people know this is what we're about at Brentwood Baptist Church and all of its campuses. That's kind of where I would start. Yeah. We're missional creatures. God gives missions to us. He's clear about what those missions are. And then we need to be clear with our congregation so that they know why we exist as a church and what we're about.
Yeah, where there is no vision, the people will perish.
That's exactly right.
Proverbs. Yeah. So it's very clear that we are called to go in that direction. I love how you say that because we do need that purpose to move forward. And then our job as leaders to steward our people towards that repeatedly. Bill, following up a little bit on that, I think it'd probably be helpful for our people to hear this is what's really the difference between a mission and a vision?
Yeah, boy, those two terms get thrown out sometimes synonymously, and they're really not the same, right? I mean, missional are usually shorter statements, right, about what we're going to be about, and John already espoused ours, And then I think when you get into vision, it can be a little more detail, Maybe it can be a little aspirational. We can throw out a few little numbers or those kind of things. The vision is kind of painting a picture, right, of what it looks like, where we're going. So we're looking at some sort of horizon. Maybe there's a 6 month, and then a year, and then 5 years. Where do we want to be? I mean, think about when people join any organization or anything, they want to know what the end, what are we trying to get to? Yeah. Where are we going? I mean, if I'm baking a cookie, I want to know what it's going to taste like at the end or what it's looking like. If I'm building a swing set, or if I'm building an organizational team around, hey, something we're trying to produce, whatever that might be. And so I think, like I said, when people join any kind of organization, club, whatever it might be, they all have missions, right? And a lot of times you'll go into places and see mission or vision statement on the wall because, again, John said this well, that kind of drips into people. They need to see that regularly to remind themselves, what am I here? Oh, I'm just adding up these spreadsheets today. No, you're not. You're contributing to this overall vision where we're trying to get to, and that's motivational. Whereas day to day, minute by minute, may not be.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. We give the mission to tell people, all right, this is what we're about. This is what we're doing. And that vision, as you said, it's a little bit more specific. You're giving that people that picture of what we're moving towards as we're accomplishing the mission. So like for us here, we've boiled it down and reduced it into that 5-year vision of gospel conversations by the millions, community needs by the thousands, and healthy congregations in the hundreds. You know, this is what we want to be about. And as we're pursuing that, we're fulfilling our mission as well. So we've talked a little bit about why that's so key and important for us to clarify for our people. But then going from that talk and the belief of what we hold to really our next steps and our actions. So how do we practically translate this into ministry priorities, or what we do with event calendars and our goals? How do we take it from mission and vision and really start to move it towards our strategy piece? So, Bill, why don't you kick that part off?
I can, yeah. I think, first of all, we need to understand why we even need to do that, right?
Yeah.
Because you can have a vision that is just the best thing ever, but if you don't have a way of pushing toward it or getting there, it still doesn't help you in a sense. It's totally aspirational. And it's almost worthless. It's a little bit more than worthless because it is a vision, but now we do have to drive toward it in some way if this is a vision. And the way you develop those visions, obviously, is by getting people together, figuring out what we're about, what's our skill set, or what do we want to be. But now as we start drilling down, some people you'll find are actually geared more toward the strategy side. They will naturally think about, I'm driving from here to New York City. Well, where am I going to go? What path will I take? What will the steps be? When will I need to stop? Do I need to book a hotel now, or do I not? And sometimes if you don't have these stair steps along the way, people will lose heart and they'll lose confidence in the fact that you can even push to a vision. And so, it's extremely important. I can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah, you get the vision people that can go from A to Z real easily.
Yeah.
But you've got to get the people to take them from B to Y too.
Yeah.
And so that's some of what we're doing as we're structuring this strategy and moving people from the vision to implementation. But John, from your seat as a pastor, how do you take your campus and say, all right, here are our church-wide, this is what we're doing. Now, how do you lead that towards when we're planning out the calendar for all of 25 and 26?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it starts with talking about it all the time.
Yeah.
That lots of conversation around mission and vision and strategy within churches and within organizations as a whole. And it can be just one of those things that it's like this really cool exercise to say we did it.
Yeah.
We came up with our mission and vision, and it's in a notebook, kind of in a file folder or somewhere on your computer, but it never gets talked about. To move from mission and vision down to priorities and ministry priorities and even calendaring to day-to-day things, it has to be something that you're talking about on a regular basis, so that when you do bring up the language of your mission and vision, your people are not like, wait, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
Like, we never talk about this. So we're regularly in our staff meetings, I'll go around and ask people, this isn't every staff meeting, but I will pick a minister and let them know ahead of time, hey, I'd love for you to connect our staff with how your role fulfills our mission, our vision, and how you fit into our strategy.
Yeah.
You just tell us about what your day-to-day work is and how you see it fulfilling this mission and vision. But then getting down to like very practical things, planning ministry priorities in line with our mission, our vision, and our strategy, the 5 Gs. It really gets down to me sitting down with our executive pastor and running, priority triangle. What are our must-dos? What are our should-dos? What are our nice-to-dos? Or if other people think in terms of big rocks, medium rocks, small rocks, you want to be able to identify those things that you're going to be doing on a quarterly, an annual basis, and whatever it is, and then be able to work from there down to, well, if that's what you're doing annually or every 6 months or quarterly, well, then what should you be doing this week? And what should you be doing today? And we talk to our teams regularly about that. And I think our staff has a pretty good idea and has caught that vision of, well, we need to be working in terms of what our vision is and our goals are as a church, down to what are our campus goals now, what are your individual goals as a minister, and now what are you doing on a daily and weekly basis?
Yeah.
So it's really just moving from big picture down to small picture, and knowing what are your must-dos to hit those goals, your should-dos, and then nice to do if there's additional time.
Yeah, that prioritization, it gives the wide fence parameters of what you can work on down to that granular level. It helps you also to be able to say yes to things that are important, but I know sometimes in church life, it gives you the ability to say no.
Yeah.
Right? Because people will come at you from all different approaches like, hey, we need to do Wednesday night supper again, or we need to do X, Y, and Z again, or we need to do this event like we used to do way back in the day. But then you put that through the filter of, all right, well, how does that line up with our mission, our vision, our ongoing strategy of gospel conversations, groups, going, gathering, and giving? All of those things become a really helpful measure for how we prioritize our time. That's a really important thing.
Yeah. And I just to piggyback on that, I think that's probably what you've just said is probably the most important argument for why you should have a clearly defined mission, vision, and strategy. Because the reality is, while the Great Commission is clear, so many churches, there are so many faithful ways to go about fulfilling the Great Commission. And so many churches do it differently. Some choose to emphasize mercy ministry. Some choose to emphasize having like their own Bible Institute, or, you've got to make all these decisions about what you're going to be about as a church. Because if you don't make those decisions on the front end, you will have people, because we are missional creatures, coming to you with all sorts of ideas, and you can just be spread so thin doing so many different things. And eventually you get to a point, if you're pastoring in a situation like that, where you ask the question, wait, why are we doing all of this? I don't understand why we're doing this thing and that thing and that thing. They might all be good and fine things to do, but how are they driving us towards that goal?
Goals solve so many problems, honestly, in the church, because, from the idea of cutting down on a disunifying situation, people are upset or they want this or that. Say, hey, look, this is what we're about. These are our goals. You can always point back to the unity of the body of Christ related to this is what we're about. Don't be arguing over where to sit on Sunday or where you're parking. Those are frivolous, right? Here's what we're about. And for the individual employee, especially I tell people in central support, right, who can sometimes lose the vision of, well, how am I helping the church at large? And it's like, listen, you have individual goals that, again, you said it well, they're tied up to campus goals, they're tied up to our corporate goals. And so when you can refocus yourself on this is what I'm about and these are what I'm working toward, helps refine your day-to-day work, helps motivate you, and everything else you need to keep pushing forward with the vision.
And what you guys have both said, particularly is relating to individuals on a daily basis and understanding how they fit in. That's probably my biggest passion as a leader, because the number one cause of job dissatisfaction, like you were mentioning, is when people don't really see how their job connects to all of that and why they're even important. So as a leader, we have to continually point back to that. Like John, you were saying, we drip that, we continually communicate it. But even in that supervisory relationship, when we're sitting down having those one-on-ones with our people, and if you're a pastor in a church and you've got staff, like continually go back to them and say, how does this connect? Do you see how important and valuable what you do is to this overall process? And so that's really good for us to think through that and as a ways to prioritize what we're doing, but also to evaluate how we're doing the programs that we're a part of. And the natural segue out of that is, it's calendaring, it's making the goals. But Bill, this is where a lot of your time in central support and when we're doing budget development, but talking about how we align our resources with this mission, vision, and strategy. How do we do that with our budget process and how we develop things?
Yeah, that's a good question, because obviously, you want to know what someone is really about or what they believe in. Hey, we say look at their checkbook. Now I would say look at their online statement, because nobody has a checkbook, but you know what I'm getting at. And so same thing for a church. If you want to know what we're about, you should be able to tell just by simply looking at how we spend money. What's our budget? What are we putting money towards? And so when we're in the budget process, and we'll pull back the curtain a little on how we do that here, we let each of our campuses, develop budgets and goals and dreams about what they want to spend money on that align with their goals. That all rolls up to a central meeting, with all the executive pastor heads who represent their campus as well. It's never a a fight in there. It's a discussion. We all want to advance the kingdom. We're trying to use those resources well to do that. And so it's a discussion, and we're trying to be for them. I mean, I think when you look at our budget in general, obviously, like most churches, we have probably half of it going to personnel to help carry out the ministry. But then, we're giving over 20% of our money away to missions.
Yep.
And we're putting so much money into ministry areas. Sure, there's got to be something that's paying the electric bill and is keeping the lights on, so to speak, and those kind of things. But most of the money then is going out to various campuses, ministry areas, or out to other organizations, because we're trying to further the gospel, not just in our own little realm here, but worldwide. And I think that we're showing that we're trying to do that.
Yeah, because it's got to be reflective of what you say you're about.
Yeah.
And that's the way, and transparency in finance and the way that we present our budget to our people and to our churches demonstrates that and makes that connection. And John, following that up, at the campus level, when you're leading the team to make their budgets, Bill talked about putting in their dream requests and discussing that. How do you lead your team to do that well and think about that strategically?
Yeah, that's been really neat to be a part of and to see, having been in this role now for just about a year and a half, and thinking about how our mission, our vision, our strategy trickles down to that small granular level. This is a good question for how that granular level works its way up into the broader organization. So my regular practice of meeting with ministers, talking to them, we're talking through some questions that are just kind of, off the cuff, things that are coming to mind in the conversation. But then we're always working through some questions that are baked into place. How are you doing in your role? Are there challenges that you're running into? What are those challenges? What are your needs and resources? Are there ways that we can come around you and better resource you for your role? So we're talking about those things regularly. So I'm hearing right at the very beginning, when they're like, I have this need in worship, or I have this need in connections, or whatever it might be. I'm aware of it from the very get-go. I'm able to follow up with them through continuing conversations. And then as they gain clarity around what those needs are, and they're able to document, here's why we need this help and how we need this help. For me, it starts to come together. Okay, now this is moving to a conversation that I need to start bringing this to the people who are involved in these hiring conversations. And I get to see it at Station Hill, and then also being the South Region lead pastor, I get to represent other campuses and then be a part of the process where I'm comparing our needs at Station Hill with other campuses and realizing, hey, that need that they have actually needs to go ahead of this need that we have, or vice versa, whatever it is. And then that works itself up the chain to our executive leadership team and ultimately to our trustees. And so it's great just being a part of that process and seeing it all come together.
Yeah, and as we talked about before, you've got a good plumb line there with the mission, the vision, and the strategy to coach them along of like, we call them dream requests, where they're asking for more money. And if they come to you with one and it's this great big dream of, hey, we want to put this towards this big event, you get to go back and say, well, all right, well, how does that connect with the goals and everything else like we were just talking about? Because if it doesn't, then you get to be the dream killer.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Which you have to be.
You have to be. Yeah. And I think that's the hard part in that is like when you have budget process, you always want to give everybody an opportunity. But again, that plumb line, that litmus test of where does it connect back is the key. And I think that's what you guys are highlighting. And you brought up something, John, that is another big part of us in talking with alignment of mission and vision and strategy. But our system's unique. We have a central location. We have Brentwood Baptist as a whole with 9 campuses. But we have these regional campuses that each have their own local context. So we have this unifying mission, vision, strategy, but there's distinctives at the campus level. How do you manage, and how do you see other campuses managing that tension between I'm in my own individual context for you down in Spring Hill, but I'm part of this larger whole?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that I think our campus pastors wrestle with regularly and talk about on a weekly basis, pretty much in our weekly campus pastor meeting. So we staff in line with our mission, vision, and strategy, and so you're going to find many of the same roles at each of our campuses, just depending on the size. Some may exist, some may not at those campuses. But really, it comes down to taking our mission as a church and our strategy as a church and just applying it to different contexts. So if you're in Columbia or Spring Hill, you're dealing more with families, people who are working, lots of blue collar, things like that. And if you're versus some of our campuses up in Nashville, they may be dealing with more of an urban context and some of the cultural things that come along with that. So you're simply trying to use pastoral wisdom to know how to apply our gathering strategy, our giving strategy, what does it look like here? And so each campus pastor has his own unique personality, but we're all in line with what our mission, vision, and strategy as a church. And then when we come together for our campus pastor meetings, we're talking about, hey, I'm facing this issue at my campus. How do I go about doing this and bringing our mission, vision, and strategy to bear, in Lockland Springs or Woodbine or Harpeth Heights, whatever it is. And so we're regularly talking about it and just trying to help each other on a regular basis, because those concerns come up, those questions come up about how do we apply this strategy in this particular setting or in this particular circumstance and situation. And we're trying to help one another along in doing that. And that also kind of ties into our regional structure. So with South Region Pastor, lead North Region Pastor, Aaron Bryant, so we're meeting with our campus pastors regularly and talking about what's happening on the ground and how are you staying aligned with the broader church.
Yeah, I love the way the campus pastors in particular exegete the culture that they're in. And when you guys are in preaching team together, how you talk about how are your people going to hear this message and how are they going to process it as you work through the text. So that's great. And, Bill, I know your role with central support, you kind of get one main hub, but everything connects back. So how do you, with that department and making sure that centrally aligned things are connected back to this mission and vision?
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest answer to that is, each of the people that I supervise, they're working with the campus pastors and others, right? So they really have a good feel for how people are trying to implement at various locations. I think they have a good understanding because they are interacting with these people on a regular basis, and in essence, that gives them a good clarity around what the campus pastors and the regions are trying to do, but that also, I think, helps them support them. We're a support team, if you will, right? We're trying to support people in finances and facilities and live production and all these ways. And so I think when they get a vision of understanding the vision of the church, number one, but also the goals of the individual campuses, they're able to go in there and support them well, knowing that whether they need more money for an initiative, or these are the people who know where extra money might be had, or who's not using it or who is, and they help make adjustments. Not based on favoritism, based on, hey, where's this working? How can we work together? And I think one of the unique, I just feel like we're very unique in the sense that I sense a camaraderie amongst our people. It's not, oh, I'm building a little kingdom over here in this realm, and you're building one over there, and John's building one down here. I mean, I feel like, hey, we have each other's best interests at heart, and we can have a direct conversation about those things. And so those make an organization better as a whole.
And I think that camaraderie comes out of the fact that you are pursuing the same things.
Absolutely.
You're aiming in the same direction.
I mean, we have disagreements, but at the end of the day, we all know that we're pursuing that same vision, and we believe in it. Clearly, I think when people, we hire them, we let them know how important that is to us. I mean, you may have as well worked at churches where they didn't have written goals. We didn't do that. That wasn't a thing we did. And so every day we kind of thought, well, okay, if I'm in charge of student ministry, I just try to get more students and teach them something, which is, kind of what I call low-level goal. It's not bad, but if you're going to try to grow and just be more directional, in what I think the Bible tells us to do, I think you have to have some guardrails around that. You have to have strategy. You have to have accountability. At a smaller church, I think you need to have other church leaders that you're talking to that can help you. We're lucky. We have great people from numerous campuses that we can go to discuss both goals and implementation of those. But if you're at a smaller church, you may not have that, but you do have those resources. You just need to tap into them.
Well, I think you brought up a good point there too of when you have stated goals and when you're pursuing a stated mission and vision, there's accountability there.
Yeah.
Because people can see, are you lining up with what you said you're going to do? And that's another key benefit to that.
Yeah.
Talking about all of the differences and how we manage the context, I'll leave this open. Either one of you can respond first, whoever goes at it. What do you do when you start to see mission creep? When the teams that you lead, the campuses that you lead, when they start to veer off or they're not prioritizing well, what do you do? How do you step in?
Yeah, I think that's where the importance of having regular meetings, regular check-ins comes into play, because it's at those regular meetings, whether it's a weekly with your staff, monthly for me with regional campus pastors, where I'm able to ask those questions and check in and talk about whether it's major initiatives or things that they're wanting to do. And you're able to assess, like, on the ground with them right then and there, like, help me understand, how is that fitting in? Let me see it from your shoes. I'm just hearing about this for the first time. Yeah. Tie it together to our broader mission as a church. Show me how that's working out. And then you're able to address those things. But I think that is why those regular meetings, those regular check-ins, the reason why it's so important is because mission drift is like, it's almost like it's baked into the system as well. Like we are going to drift. Yeah. I mean, I think about even recently, we were on a long car trip as a family. I had our destination plugged in onto our phone, right? Yeah. It's right in front of me. But I took it out of the holder that it was supposed to be in and set it lower because one of our kids wanted to use the phone for just a minute. They passed it back up. And I had the map right there, but it wasn't in my holder right in front of me. And lo and behold, I missed a couple turns. And it was like, because I didn't have the audio on, I wasn't alerted. And I looked down, I'm like, I missed a turn. Like we are going to drift if we don't stay constantly focused, hands on the wheel. Not that we need to control everything, but that hands on the wheel illustration is like, I may be driving down a straight highway, so I'm not having to change this thing a whole lot, but I may be needed to take turns. And so my hands better be on the wheel at all times. Yeah. And I think driving towards that mission, that vision, is very similar, in which we need to be engaging with our staff, whether you're in a large church context or a small one. If it's just you and another pastor, are you talking about it regularly? Yeah. Are you making sure that you guys are going in the same direction? When you say yes to an event or an initiative, are you articulating how this fits into the broader picture of what you're trying to do as a church? So it's those regular check-ins that I think are so important for correcting mission drift.
Well, we talk about that even in the review process. When we're talking about our goals, are we on track or are we off track? And if you're off track, like sometimes people get like, oh, I'm getting a bad grade. No, it's just, hey, we're off track. Let's course correct. And it's a lot easier to do that with preventative maintenance along the way than to have it all fall apart and then you're trying to clean it back up. Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to get each of our ministers to be on track, so to speak. Yeah. Right? Because like you said, John, we're driving the car is one thing, but we can't always drive the car because we're not there today. And so I'm not driving, or I'm on vacation. I can't be worrying that someone else is taking the car off track, And so, I think that's what's so good about regular is everybody kind of gets on board with that. And then they know, it's not dependent on me. There's no indispensable person, so to speak. They know how to continue on the right path and teach them how to course correct as well. We don't want them so dependent on us that we have to do it all for them.
Well, and again, it all circles back to the importance of clarity there. Yeah. Of how we're consistently repeating, this is our mission, this is our vision, this is our strategy, this is what we pin our goals to. And the more that we bake that into our culture, into our understanding, then those course corrections don't become so hard, because then it's not this subjective, oh, well, you need to get back on track. No, it's an objective. Hey, this is what we're called to do. Let's do this together. So I think the key for us in talking about all this with mission, vision, strategy is it starts, number one, with a biblical mission and vision. We're not creating the mission like you talked about. Right. Jesus has given us the Great Commission. We're just coming up with our own articulation of that with our mission of engaging the whole person with the whole gospel of Jesus Christ. That's what it is. And the vision, our pastor, he didn't go up on high on a mountain and receive it from the Lord. That's not what it's about. It's him thinking through biblically our context and what God's calling us to do and fulfilling it. And then our job as leaders, as good stewards and shepherds of our people, is to establish strategy so that we can work forward from that. So for all of the pastors that are listening, whatever the context that you're in, you can do that. You start with the scripture, start with understanding your context, and work forward with a clear mission, vision, and strategy, and work towards accountability structures to pursue that.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that as we move forward, if you look back, especially at the goals of Brentwood Baptist, you'll notice they haven't changed that much over the last 4 or 5 years. We're not, we're not always grabbing at the new flashy, thing that's laying on the table. We're trying to be biblically faithful. We're trying to lead our people in a direction. And again, we normally develop a 5, 6, 7-year vision. We push toward that. But our goals, we're going to have a goal about getting people in groups together for Bible study, a goal about preaching the word, a goal about sharing the gospel with the world around us. So those aren't changing measurably, I would say. And, they change slowly. We're more the big slow ship that turns rather than, let's start back and forth. We just found over the time that steady, solid growth is attractive to people, right? And I think it's what we're called to do. And as we stay the course, we see the effects, maybe not over 2 months, but over 2 years and 15 years and 20 years. You just see what happens. And it's a good way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think about the phrase, clarity is charity. Being clear up front about who you are as a church, what you're going to be about, is only going to help you in the long run as a pastor. And the importance and the blessing of unity when you're leading a church, it is a wonderful thing when you're working together alongside of people who are all headed in the same direction. Because even when you're headed in the same direction, you're still going to have difference of opinions on exactly how to go about getting there. But if you know you're headed in the same direction, then that's just going to be a huge blessing to you. And the reason I bring that up is because as we're thinking about, as we're moving towards wrapping up the conversation, this conversation about mission and vision, why it's so important is if you're leading a church, let's say you're pastoring a church and it's only 2 or 3 pastors, or a small group of people and maybe a smaller church. I bet if you asked your elders or your leaders, whatever context you're in, if you don't have a mission and vision, ask them what theirs is as like a useful exercise. Hey, we're not going to share these with each other, but I want you to come with your mission, your vision, your strategy of how you would do this as a church. I bet if you have 5 leaders, you're going to have 5 different mission, vision strategies. And then you realize, well, that means we got 5 people headed in 5 different directions. So you just want to have these conversations, not just about agreeing with theology, not just about philosophy of ministry, but how you're going to carry these things out. What are you about as a church? What are you about as leaders, as pastors? And that's diving into those conversations, which can be harder. But you get on the same page when you do that.
And I think that's the challenge of leadership, of how do you direct and channel all of your people to pursue the same thing. But as under shepherds in the church, that's what the Lord's called us to do. And that's the opportunity that we have. Thanks for listening to today's conversation. I hope you can join us in just a few short weeks for the Elevate Conference on Tuesday, September the 9th at Brentwood Baptist in Nashville, Tennessee. Check out elevatechurchconference.com for more details on the conference and upcoming events. We'll see you next time on our Elevate podcast.